Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you today? All systems go. It's March 2nd, first coffee conversation in the month of March. Man, already March has been really uh, came up on us pretty quickly, didn't it? Yep. How you guys doing? COVID-19. We are almost a year in. It's been kind of crazy, but we are still well and thriving, striving, standing strong. Yeah. Thank you, Shayna. Great day it is. That's for sure. What a day we've got for you today. This is, I know it's Women's History Month, and we are definitely going to launch a series of great uh, women phenomenal women. We're going to call it our Phenomenal Women series, right? But we just kind of wanted to, finish up our conversations on Black history. Although February is Black History Month, we celebrate Black History 365 because that's what we are, culturally relevant conversation from all around the world, all around the diaspora. And we thank you so much for supporting us in that area. If you want to support independent media, beachcityradio.com, beachcityradio.com. You can cash app us. You can there's the information at the bottom of the screen. You can PayPal us. You can buy some advertising. You can do whatever you want to do. Just support independent media as we grow and become a vital source for you, our people, all across the world. Also, too, Coffee Conversations is now available as an audio podcast. So if you miss this live stream, it's always on demand on beachcityradio.com and on Facebook and on YouTube. But you can also download the audio wherever you get your podcast. We're on Apple, we're on Spreaker, we're on iHeart, Stitcher. You just name it, it's out there. If you just Google us, Coffee Conversations with Greg J, you can hear the audio version wherever you get your favorite podcast. All right? All right. There it is. We got it. Man, feeling good. March 2nd, 2021. We wanted to have the conversation today. We postponed it because our guest last week, he had a schedule conflict. Oh, I think I just popped him in. Well, here we go. Belay what I just said and let's get to the meat of the matter. Yes. So listen, in history, in American history, there's this notion of the sundown town, right? Certain type, if you were caught in sundown, after sundown in the city, bad things can happen, And here in Southern California, where we originate, you would be surprised, man, where, if your town was a sundown town or not. So let me tell you a quick story before we bring our professor on, our guest on today. Um, so a couple of months ago, if you guys were looking on beachcityradio.com in the California Black Media Network section of our website, we published a story about Sundown Towns, and they quoted widely the professor. And I was like, dang, and I went on to his website and really uh, began to research. So I tracked him down and invited him to come on and kind of give us a quick explanation, analysis. He is a renowned sociologist, professor, author. He's got books. Man, lies my teacher told me. Sundown Town, just a bunch of other stuff. And here he is, right here. Let me see. Dr. Jim Loewen, how are you today, sir?
Well, I'm fine.
Yes,
I
sir.
guess I was lurking rather than letting you know I was in. I've been waiting for you to call on me. Here we are.
Yes, yes, here we are. Here we are. Let me just say this too. I'm going to bring our other guest, who's the other part of the conversation, just so he can say hello. Because I know you have a limited time with this professor, and I really do deeply appreciate you for coming on with us to chit chat with us here about the Sundown Towns and the other stuff that you have. I always have a lot of academics come through here, so we can, really analyze, man, the the essence of American history from a Black perspective. And I do appreciate you. One of the centers of African American history, culture, and other stuff is way down there in Macon, Georgia. He is Harold Young. I've been knowing Harold a long time because he's actually from LA, but he's down there in Macon, Georgia. Hi, Harold.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Doing all right. Harold is the executive director of the Tubman Museum down in Macon, Georgia. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. Harold, I'm just going to take you out just for a minute so we
Not a
can have
problem.
a conversation with Jim, but say hello to the peoples.
Hi, Harold. I've known about the Tubman Museum for a long time,
Awesome.
partly because you guys, I think, have the only Sundown Towns sign in existence that I've located. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
At least I think you do.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. It was a pleasure. I'm waiting to hear and learn from you, sir. You know, I'm inspired by what you have to bring to the table. So I'll just wait and listen.
All right.
All right. Good stuff, you guys. Good stuff. Okay. So, Professor Jim, man, what's a sundown town?
Well, let me say I'll define it, and then I brought an audiovisual aid that I'm going to show.
Yes, sir.
But about California specifically, a sundown town is a town that for decades was, a few still are, all white, and all white is in quotes, and I'll talk about that in a minute. All white on purpose. Okay, has to be on purpose. Now, when I was growing up, I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, which is right in the center of Illinois. And Decatur is a biracial town, but it was surrounded by towns, little towns, that were all white. But it never dawned on me that they might be all white on purpose. I had actually an aha reaction when I was doing research on this book, Sundown Towns. And it happened in my hometown of Decatur. I was the keynote speaker for the second annual Decatur Writers Conference, because my book, Lies My Teacher Told Me, which you mentioned, is actually the third, makes me the third best-selling author in Decatur, but they couldn't afford the second best-selling one, so they got me anyway, and that was fun. And I had a wonderful time, and I gave a talk about Lies My Teacher Told Me. But then, at the end of my talk, and this was in the year 2001, I was asked, I told the group what I was working on now, which was this book, Sundown Towns. And up until that moment, I had expected to do a little more research in Illinois than any other single state, just because I know, it's my home state. If somebody tells me that Hazy is a sundown town, well, I kind of know that that's over in eastern Illinois and stuff. I thought I would discover 10 or so sundown towns in Illinois and maybe 50 across the United States. I, as I said, had an aha reaction at the end of my talk in Decatur, because I told them what I'm now working on, and I invited people to come on down and talk with me if they knew anything about it. And to my astonishment, more than 20 people came down, and they told me stories about every single town around Decatur except 3. Okay, it never occurred to me that the black folks weren't in these towns because whites kept them out. I thought black folks were just showing good judgment by not living in these little bitty towns, too small to have a motion picture theater. But no, I got all these stories, and they had details, and they were believable. Actually, one was not believable. 2 people told me that a town near Champaign-Urbana, a town called Villa Grove, town of about 2,450, that it actually sounded a whistle or a siren at 6 p.m. to tell black folks to be out of town. Now, that just struck me as preposterous. I mean, it was telling me that they had a siren. I figured it was probably a shift change at a factory or something. And it was telling me that it was a sundown town, or at least these 2 people separately, they weren't together, believed that it was a sundown town. Well, exactly a year later, October of 2002, I found myself in Villa Grove on purpose, walking up the steps to the enormous wraparound porch on the Shangri-La Hotel. And I recommend you, the next time you're in Villa Grove, don't stay at the Shangri-La. Actually, it burned down a little later. But I was going to go interview the old white men who made it their home, who lived there as an SRO. And as I walked up the steps, the weekend manager this was a Saturday, he was sitting at a card table on this huge porch, and he said perfectly reasonably, can I help you? And I said, yes. And so I went over. I said, hi, my name is Jim Loewen. I'm from over here in Decatur. I'm doing a study on small towns in Illinois that, let's see, what did I say? I'm doing a study about small towns around Decatur. And then I asked him, and this is a quote, I said, is it true that Villa Grove has, or had until recently, because my two people didn't know if it was still going off, had a siren that sounded at 6 p.m.? And he said, yes. And I said, well, is that on a factory or on a grain elevator? And he said, no, it's on the water tower. And it is on the water tower. There's a picture of it in the portfolio of photos that's in my book, Sundown Towns, on that water tower. I took that picture. It's still on that water tower. I said to myself, city property. And then I asked him, well, why did it sound at 6 p.m.? And he said, do you mean originally? And I said, well, yes, originally. And he said, well, originally. And so I'm hearing all these ums, and I said 4 words to make the interview flow better. But they couldn't have biased it because they had no content. I said, it's okay, I know. And you see, I didn't say what I know. And he looked relieved, and he said, well, originally it sounded at 6 p.m. to tell blacks to be out of town. While I was surmising this, I was still blown away by it. I mean, the idea that at 5:59 p.m., there's a bunch of black folks right at the edge of town there, and they say, oh, damn, there goes that siren again, and they trudge off into the sunset. I mean, why not sound a whistle at 6 p.m. to tell elephants to be out of town? It would make about as much sense, I thought. It's not like Villa Grove is on the road from anywhere to anywhere. So in the next minute, I wasn't a good interviewer. I said, really? And he said, yes. And I said, does it still sound? He said, no, they stopped it about 3 years ago, which would be 1999. And I said, well, does that mean that Villa Grove changed its policy? And he said, well, no, he didn't know about Villa Grove's policy, but people living near the water tower complained about the noise. So I went back on the next Monday, and I did a total of 11 different interviews in Villa Grove. And I found that everything he told me was precisely correct. It wasn't clear that Villa Grove had ever changed its policy. He, in fact, told me a story of how he personally, as he put it, can I say the S word on the radio?
You can.
He said he participated along with a bunch of other 22-year-old toughs in beating the shit out of a couple of black men from Decatur, actually, who were coming to Villa Grove to date Villa Grove girls. Okay, so and this happened several years ago. So by so doing, of course, he maintains Villa Grove's reputation for another few years, and nobody's going to try for a little while. So that's an example then of a sundown town. And now let me show you the picture. Can I show you the picture?
Absolutely.
I'll see if I can get the lighting on it well. This is a picture of, first of all, we'll start with the upper half of California. Let's see if I turn this around. That's maybe too glaring.
Yeah, a little too glaring.
I'm going to do it the other way then. Maybe that's good. I'm not sure it's in focus. Well, I hope you can see that there are, in fact, lots of pinks, lots of places shaded pink in the upper half of California, all over the place here. And then maybe you'll see this one better. This is the Bay Area. And there we go. That is there's San Francisco Peninsula, and here's the East Bay, and all these things that are pink were sundown towns. And you may say, wow, they're not sundown towns anymore. You know, like San Leandro. There was a proposal actually after World War II to make the entire peninsula of San Francisco a sundown peninsula, except for the city of San Francisco. In other words, Daly City, what do we got here? Stanford, of course, Burlingame, San Mateo, San Carlos, Redwood City. All of those cities were sundown towns. Okay, the ones on the East Coast were too. El Cerrito, San Leandro, I mentioned, Hayward, Castro Valley, Walnut Creek, etc. Mill Valley up on the north. So sundown towns were all over the place in California.
Vallejo or Oakland?
Say what?
Vallejo or Oakland?
Well, not Oakland, of course.
Yeah.
Black folks have been allowed to stay. Now, that doesn't mean that Oakland doesn't have some segregated neighborhoods. But I'm not talking about segregated. I'm talking about entire cities that kept African Americans out of the whole city, sometimes entire counties. For example, in Maryland, the furthest west county is Garrett County, way over there by West Virginia and everything. The whole county not only was a sundown county, but it had the infamous signs. I'm going to say the N word, actually, not say it, but use it a little later. I don't want to use it very often. In Garrett County, the sign said N word, don't let the sun go down on you in Garrett County when you came to the county line. And that's pretty clear, you know.
Now, okay, so now in Southern California, I saw on your website there, man, we could put the website. I'm going to put the website in our chat, you guys, so you can kind of look at it. But there was an exhibit you had about Burbank High School.
Yes, it's one of the pictures. Yeah.
Yep. And so Burbank High School, it gives all of the attributes of this beautiful part of town. It's in the foothills and all of that. And the last keynote it said is no Negroes.
Absolutely. A lot of towns advertise themselves that way. Got whole towns in Burbank did. Towns in Missouri, in Wisconsin, all over the north. And let me hasten to say that there are almost no sundown towns in what we might call the traditional South. And in my book, in fact, I have an account of a rich white family from Alabama that moves to a town that turns out to be a sundown town in Indiana. And they have to send their maid back home lest she be killed. And they're astounded at this. And they say, you people don't know how to run race relations. I mean, who's going to be the maid? Who's going to do the hard work? You know? And they actually have a point. I mean, this is an area in which white Southerners were more rational and less racist, if you will, than people in California and Pennsylvania and everywhere in between. So sundown towns are a northern phenomenon. But yet, if you think about this movie, I don't know if you saw it, The Green Book won the Academy Award. Okay. Yes. Surprising number of people have not seen it, especially Black people. But I saw it. Of course, I had to see it as part of my sociological training. But think about this. Here we have, I think people know what the plot is. It was one of these odd couples, kind of like Driving Miss Daisy, but in reverse, right? We have a white chauffeur and a famous Black pianist who's in the back seat. The famous Black pianist, among other things, has never eaten fried chicken before, which is a very unusual. Right. I don't think there are too many white folks. I personally would like to say I've eaten fried chicken. But anyway, the movie isn't all bad, and it is based on a truth. It did happen, kind of. But here's what they get wrong that gets me. These people start out driving across Indiana. Indiana has at least 300 sundown towns. They don't hit a single one. Then they go through Illinois. Illinois, I came to learn after my aha experience in Decatur, didn't have 10 sundown towns. I'm now at a count of 506 sundown towns in Illinois alone, which is 2/3 of all the towns that there are in Illinois. Okay. And I think a similar ratio occurs in Iowa. So Iowa has something like 200 sundown towns. They go into Iowa, no problem. They go to St. Louis, they go to Memphis. And then traveling through Mississippi, damn if they don't run into a sundown town, because everybody knows bad racism is down south in Mississippi. And in fact, this is the 5th time that I know of that Hollywood has treated sundown towns. 4 times they put them in Mississippi, including in this movie, and 1 time they put it in Georgia. Now, I lived in Mississippi for years. I identified every sundown town there is in Mississippi. I found 3. Okay, so it's a miracle this odd couple happens into one of the 3 sundown towns in Mississippi after missing 506 of them in Illinois, hundreds of them in. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And this is an example, and Hollywood is always doing this, of putting bad racism down south. And so sundown towns, the real ones, well, they did get treated this fall by HBO in this HBO series Lovecraft Country. I don't know if you caught that, but those guys ran into a sundown town in, I believe it was Massachusetts. And in fact, and that was in the first episode. And in fact, that episode, it turns out, was credited by the author to having read my book, Sundown Towns. So he knows.
Wow, interesting stuff. So, we do grow up knowing, okay, we know you're told sometimes, that you don't go into certain, certain towns and everything. Dwayne Cofield says, hey, he just found out that Torrance was a sundown town, and, it's long known hey, don't drive over there, right? And so these are the residues still of the sundown towns. They may not still have these laws, but still the residue and it's spoken, right? You shouldn't go there.
Yeah, I think that every sundown town in America needs to address its past. And Glenwood recently in your area, well, in California anyway, has done this.
Yeah, Glendale.
Glendale. Excuse me, Glenwood. Where did I get that? Yes, Glendale did. Thank you. And a couple of towns in the Midwest have. La Crosse, Wisconsin did, and Goshen, Indiana did. And there's a few others that are stepping up to the plate. And I think in this, shall we say, post-George Floyd moment that we're still in, with all these BLM marchers and so on, I think we ought to ask every sundown town, even if they're not and the ones in California are not sundown towns anymore, or most of them aren't anyway. That is to say, they have at least allowed a handful of Black folks in. They don't burn down the house anymore or beat up the kids on their first day of school, which is things that used to happen. In fact, sometimes quite the opposite happens. Sometimes the next door neighbor comes over with chocolate chip cookies and says, I'm glad to have you as a neighbor. So things are getting better. But until you face your past, I think there's a couple of problems that sundown towns, even though they're not sundown anymore, have. And I have an example, and my example is Ferguson, Missouri. I suspect you've heard of Ferguson.
Yes.
Unless you lived in a cave, everybody listening and watching has heard of Ferguson, Missouri. Well, Ferguson was actually one of the few suburbs of St. Louis that was not a sundown town. It actually had a small Black neighborhood until about 1940. Had about 60 people in 1940. But between 1940 and 1960, Ferguson explodes in population. It gets like 3 or 4 times bigger. And Black folks are moving into St. Louis, of course, from the South. Everybody knows that. But the Black population of Ferguson goes from 60 down to 15. How did they accomplish this feat? Well, 2 ways in particular. The one is Dwb Policing. And I think everybody knows what that is. Driving while Black policing, picking on Black motorists, making them spread, treating them with contempt, asking what's their business, and so on. That was part of it. And the other part of it was they put a big chain across the main road going to the northwest. And what was to the northwest? A little Black town called Kinloch, Missouri. Well, it's not all Black; it's about 90% Black, but it has a Black mayor and everything. Now you could still get from Kinloch to Ferguson, but you have to go roundabout. And what the chain did was it absolutely signaled not only the people in Kinloch, but by extension, African Americans everywhere, you're not wanted in Ferguson. So the population dwindled down to 15, and at that point, it became a sundown town. Well, By the time of the troubles in Ferguson several years ago, Ferguson was 65% black. There's no question it's not a sundown town anymore, but it still had the DWB police force, a police force that was almost totally white. And it had exactly one black person per shift, which makes no sense whatsoever. It's not competent, among other things. And they were still doing BLM policing. I don't know this, but I bet that they have an overwhelmingly white teaching staff. And so if you face your past and you say, okay, we were 3 steps. Step number 1, we did this. Just admitting it is very hard for some sundown towns, even though we can prove it, with details. Okay, like the details I just gave you about Villa Grove, that proves it really. All right, we did this. Number 2, we did this and it was wrong and we're sorry. In other words, we apologize. Mm-hmm. And 3, and we don't do it anymore. And that 3rd step needs to have some teeth. Okay, and you can actually see this happening on the web if you go to my website and look up what's went on a couple months ago in Glendale. The city administration gets together. Glendale's still overwhelmingly non-black, but it passed. It basically did the 3 steps, and now things are better. I'm sure that. Well, I don't know that they're better, but I think that they're better. I think that. There's some bad actors in every community. Sure. I call them thugs, and they're male. They're always male. Women are getting into it, but we hope not. Males need to stop getting into it. But in a sundown town, those bad actors believe that they have the imprimatur of the community to beat up the black kid or to throw a rock through the picture window of the new African American house. Okay, and after you've taken the 3 steps, you don't believe that anymore, and so you still got the thugs doing bad things, but they're not particularly doing them to black people, I don't think, and that's an improvement.
Mm-hmm. Is Inglewood a sundown town? Used to be a sundown town, Inglewood, California.
I don't know because there's too many for me to remember. I don't know what it says on my website. So
I feel like I saw it on your list, and I was really surprised that it is overwhelmingly African American. The entire
some towns have gone majority black. The nearest town to me is Mount Rainier, which is I'm pointing this way. It is about a mile and a half from me. I live in the District of Columbia, but it's just across the line. Okay, and Mount Rainier was a vicious sundown town. I have an account. I interviewed her personally, an African-American woman, now 65 years old, almost as old as me, my God. And she told me about how she lived in this little black town that was beyond it called North Brentwood. It's still a majority black town. And she would bike to the district to see friends, and she would bike through Mount Rainier, and she said, but we had to be flying because they would throw rocks at us. Can you imagine that? The girl's 12 years old or 13, and she's biking through town. They were allowed to go on Rhode Island Avenue, which is the main street, but otherwise, and that wasn't the most direct route for her, and so she didn't take it. Otherwise, they would get rocks thrown at them. And so I'm sitting there with a woman telling me this. Now, Mount Rainier is now 50-50. The race relations are good. It's not a sundown town anymore, but so many of these suburbs in the north, in Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, New York City, Detroit is the very worst. All these sundown suburbs around Detroit, it's just a terrible, and some of them are still close to sundown and have not apologized.
All right. Before we let you go there, Dr. Jim, listen, Dr. Gloria Willingham-Torre is asking, did you find that there were many other sundown towns that weren't codified in law but were in effect de facto sundown towns?
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There's no difference between law and no law. And this hit me upside the head. I'll just tell you one interview I had, and then I'll have to leave you. I interviewed a Washington Post reporter here in D.C. I had a retired one. I had heard that he had grown up in Johnston City, Illinois. And I already knew Johnston City was a sundown town, but I thought interviewing him, that would be interesting. And it was. And he said, he, of course, confirmed that it was a sundown town. It was still a sundown town when I went to Johnston City, in fact. But I asked him, I said, did Johnston City have a sign? Did Johnston City have an ordinance? And he said, and I quote, "Are you kidding? We didn't need a sign. We didn't need an ordinance. If a black family so much as tarried in town, the chief of police asked them their business." So here you have a situation where there's no ordinance, and this lack of ordinance is enforced by the chief of police. So I submit there's no difference between an ordinance and no ordinance.
Man, fascinating stuff. You guys, there we have it. Dr. Jim Loewen, thank you so much for
I
joining
got
us.
to say one more thing, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
If anybody listening knows of a sundown town, go to my website. Just type James W. Loewen, Loewen, into Google, and it'll come up first. Go to my website and find the Sundown Town page. That takes a little work, but you can do it. And send me an email. You can email me through my website and tell me about it, because like the town you asked me about, if it isn't listed as a sundown town, that doesn't mean it wasn't one. It means I'm only one person. How can I know about them all? And so I rely on the kindness of strangers. And in this case, I rely on the kindness of you.
There you have it. We've also put the website there in the chat, you guys, so check it on out, and so that you can see it and tap in. Let's get that history going, all right? Thank you there, Professor. You have been a blessing. Interesting stuff. And so Sundown Towns is one book. Lies My Teacher Told Me is another book.
Yeah. Also, another book that's about Confederate monuments and other kinds of monuments, Lies Across America. If you get those three, you don't have to buy them. Get your library to buy them, and then you check them out first. All right, and that way you didn't have to pay for them. All right. I'll see you later.
Thank you. Now,
bye-bye.
Peace and blessings. Bye. Harold.
Wow. Wow. Some of the same cities that we drove through and lived in, and actually I lived in Torrance before I moved here. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
That's some crazy stuff, Doc. You know, the thing about it, and we can talk, I'll talk about that when we get to my, there were some areas we just knew, and living in Los Angeles, we just didn't go.
Right.
I mean,
Culver City, Glendale, Torrance, Hawthorne.
You know, and I just thought, when I was younger, I was like, oh, well, this is just our neighborhood, you know? I mean, you stay where you are, you know, and I'm going to talk about that too, because it was very interesting how I ended up going to the Valley School. We could talk about my life and everything about that, but, you know, anyway. Man, it's good to see you, Greg. Man,
good to see you too, Harold. Hey, listen, you're over there. Look, moved down to the city and went down there to Macon, Georgia, and doing big things.
Well, you know, I'm blessed. I've been in Macon, Georgia. I came here in 2008. We moved. My family moved here. I was moved here from a church, Community Church of God, which is here. Pastor, need a minister of music, and and living in Southern California and raising a family, it was tough, especially in 2008, 2009 when things were just crashing and going crazy financially. It was just not a good time, and to be in a big city like that. And I had 3 daughters. I had other children, but we had three younger children. And it was just time to get out of there, out of California. And I didn't know anything much about Macon, Georgia. The pastor friend of mine, he said, "Hey, Harold, I want you to move to Macon." I said, "Where's Macon?" He said, "Get the map out." And I said, "Okay." Look in the middle. And I said, "Okay, I see Atlanta, I see Savannah." He said, "Look real close, the dead center." And I went like this. I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
There's nothing. What are you talking about, Macon? He said, "No, come on out here." So I came and did a workshop with the choir. fell in love with the choir members and fell in love with the people of the church. And then my wife was the mistake. I would call it a mistake. I would say the deciding factor happened. I brought my wife the second time. She said, "Oh, this is where we're moving to." I said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I just want you to come." No, no, no. She said, "Oh, no, no. It was a done deal." And she was like, "Oh, well, let's make it happen." So end up being here. But Greg, let me go back with you, man. First of all, I'm gonna tell you something about you. You were a mentor to me, whether you know it or not, before I even moved out here. I worked in urban marketing at Skechers. I did this, and I watched you for years and years doing marketing for the radio station. I mean, grinding, putting events on these massive events. I mean, absolutely crazy. And our connection, and I don't know if you know this, do you remember when when KJLA started the gospel event that you were doing in Knoxbury Farm?
Knoxbury Farm, yes, sir.
Okay. Prior to that, right before you guys took it up to do the other thing, I was doing gospel on Sundays because I took a course at UCLA to be an event planner. And there was a gentleman who was I guess the planner at Knoxbury Farm was in my class. He says, I heard what you were saying because I had an opportunity to do my presentation. Listen, let's bring gospel to Knoxbury Farm. And I was mine was nowhere near what you guys were doing. Mine was just bringing little church choirs, and they built a little stage on the little side of it. And so that was my role. I just had to book the choirs and go to Knoxbury Farm for free. Next thing you know, you guys had a conversation with Knoxbury Farm, and this big, massive gospel event took over Knoxbury Farm. 30,000 people would come there. Yeah. It was crazy, man.
Crazy.
You guys set a precedent. It was amazing. Brought in every top gospel artist that was known to man that came to that event, and I watched you, man. I was like, that's what I want to do.
Right, yeah. Man, I appreciate you so much for that. That one was, my big, massive plan at KJLH was to have, to really have the brand of the radio station at all the different theme parks in Southern California, right?
Wow.
And so we initially did it. I don't know if you remember, we did it at Disneyland. We did 2 years, right? We did that.
Right.
And Disneyland decided, the budget for the production was a little bit more than they wanted to really put out for that particular genre. It was a little difficult to really, do the back end quantification of the audience and all that there. But anyway, Knott's Berry Farm had a reputation for being a really prejudiced place, if you recall, right? It was like,
first of all, we were not going to Knott's Berry Farm, and that was one of those other cities.
It was Sundown Towns.
It was sun up, sundown, we weren't going to Knott's Berry Farm. Right. We did not go to Buena Park unless you go to Disneyland and sneak on right on out of there.
Yes, sir. And so, so finally we get the call, right? It's like, okay, we're trying to get this meeting, and they weren't stunting us for nothing. And then finally we get the call, we get down there. And so I'm in the meeting, and they want to do events. And so I already know my strategy there. If I'm in a room full of white folks, I'm not going to bring, R&B and everything. Not quite yet.
Right.
So I go, okay, listen, we're going to do gospel. Right. And at that time,
if that's safe.
That's right. Right. Okay. So we get there, and they love it. So the general manager comes in, and he wants to do, he says he's a good old boy from West Virginia. He wants to do Mighty Clouds of Joy, and he starts naming all these really super old school groups. And so I was like, well, no, and he didn't want to, it became a debate between me and him over what contemporary gospel of the day really sounded like. So I said to him, I'll tell you what, man, you want to hear some real gospel? You come to church with me, And so I'm thinking, because I'm mad now, I got an attitude. I'm in the meeting, I got an attitude,
Right.
And he looks at me and says, okay. So he comes, he picks me up. He's in a minivan with 5 other executives. And from Knott's Berry Farm, we go to West Angeles Church. Mm-hmm. And in those days, a cathedral wasn't built. So they still running 5 services out of the building at 3045 Crenshaw. And you know how you go and you tell pastor, hey, huh?
You
the
have to
line, right? So,
that must have been a trip for them.
well, we went in the back way because you
Okay,
got to
good.
tell them that the visitors are here, right?
Yeah,
And
got
so as we're going in the back to sign them up to let them know the visitors are here, here comes Bishop Blake from the previous service, and Bishop Blake, being Bishop Blake, greets him, "Hey, how are you doing?"
great,
And he
great,
looks at me, Brother Greg, look right behind me. Your boss is coming, Stevie Wonder, right? Bam. So these guys are done at this point. But then when we get in service, first of all, is that was when Kurt Carr was the director, right? So Kurt Carr,
wow. Okay.
fire's on fire.
Right.
Fire was on another level
Right.
that day. The sermon was about leadership, and it broke that man down in tears. And he's a very staunch, just super white man. It
Mm-hmm.
broke him down in tears, and his staff was looking at him like, "What the heck?" And after church was over, he was like, "Yo, anything you want to do in Knott's Farm, you do it." And so that's how that was birthed. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It was a lot of fun.
My little gospel thing I was doing, I was calling little church choirs that come sing on the corner. They built a little stage and I was like, Greg about to take this to a whole different level. And you know, were you responsible for bringing LaShawn Pace and the Pace sisters? Um, because that was actually before the actual event that you all were doing in the quad area there. I know they had them one because I mean, somebody asked me, Harold, did you do? I was like, I didn't have nothing to do with that, and I thought it was more you guys, and also kick off what that was. And I know we talking about years ago. We didn't got know, but can't remember exactly who. But that was what you all did was amazing. Knoxbury to sell out a amusement park to say we can't let anybody else in this park, through gospel music. From your vision was just amazing, And then I I had I'm not going to take credit, but I was at the meeting when Taste of Soul first kicked off. I was at the first meeting, and I was a part of that initial meeting, man.
Yeah,
And now look at
that
it.
was that was the year before I got involved with Taste of Soul. Because remember, at first it was the competing radio station,
I'm
and then
sorry about that. That's correct.
yeah.
That is 100% correct. And yes, I was at that meeting.
However, Chief Parks was on that day because I went out there to see Bernard Parks. Came up to me and said, "Next year you need to do a gospel stage," and I was like, "Oh, word," And then my good friend Brenda Marsh Mitchell, she really wanted to do gospel, and so we ended up creating. Well, I did the station stage down there on Rodeo or Obama now, Obama and Crenshaw,
Is that what it's
and
called now?
yes, it's
Ah,
Obama.
nice. Not rodeo, say rodeo, right?
No. It's Obama Boulevard,
Okay.
and then we built the gospel stage on right in front of the Sentinel, and then now it's a huge stage called the Brenda Mars Mitchell stage, and they still do
Wow.
gospel when they do it. But yeah, the Taste of Soul was something I found. Man, I found a video of Taste of Soul in my studio. And I just found this disc and I popped it. And I said, "Oh, what's this?" And it was Naughty by Nature. And just to see the massive crowd going down Crenshaw is like bananas, y'all.
It's crazy what it's turned to now. To actually that. I wanted to talk about a little history with you because this is you are. I don't know that brain of yours. It's amazing. Please, that needs to be, man. Anybody who in marketing, anybody who is ever innovative like yourself, to just take. Even your speaker series that you used to do. I'm like, man, that was just. Man, just amazing what you did for that radio station, what you branded that radio station. And it wasn't, the music was important, but those community events that connected the radio station to the community was so important. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be very honest. That's one of the things I'm doing here in Macon, Georgia. I work for a radio station. I'm on the air right now. I'm on the gospel station. I'm on from Monday through Fridays from 10 to 3. My it's really I guess mirroring what you've done, bringing we have the Pan African Festival, which I'll talk about later. The same exact concept, bringing gospel. We've had John P. Key, I've had Dorinda Clark, I've had Kiara Shear, the same thing on Saturday, Sunday. The Saturday we do a big concert festival all day long. Ended with the R&B show. We've had SOS Band, Brick, Lakeside, more so. But and all those speaker series. So I've learned from you, Greg, and I'm telling you, man, I'm still in your playbook. So
That's right. Get it, brother. Come on, let's go.
but dude, you set the trend. So I've learned you are a mentor to me, man. Even when I worked at Skechers, and we could talk about the museum. When I worked at Skechers, I went to the owners of Skechers and said, we need to break into the urban market. And I was like, they're like, what? You know,
that's how it goes, right?
Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Right.
So it was like, break into the urban market. And they said, well, how they gave me, they created a position for me. My title was the urban marketing manager. Mm-hmm. And what I had to do was product placement and bring, because the skater was, Skechers at that time was a white skater shoe. It marketed to white skater guys. That's all. That they were trying to hear that. They weren't trying to hear none of that. Because they were the owner. The owners were, the owners owned LA Gear. And then they sold it and started Skechers. So that's the history of the Greenbirds. So, I mean, they knew about how the market would work in the urban community, but they didn't have anybody to really do that. So that was my job. I started doing product placement. I started work. I got Skechers on Jamie Foxx show. I got Skechers in, they did a whole TV set with the Jamie Foxx show. We did, I think that's I Believe I Could Fly, R. Kelly's video. They had on white tennis shoes, those are Skechers. I did a lot of product placement. Anyway, I can't go through the Parkers, a lot of different TV shows back in the day. Mm-hmm. That was my job. Actually, that's how I met Whitney Houston. I gave Whitney, I went to a filming of Jamie Foxx, and her and Bobby Brown was there. Yeah. And I'll tell you about that story later.
I got a Bobby Brown story too.
I don't know if this is recorded. I'm gonna leave that alone. We'll talk about all. Woo, man. Okay,
love it.
Anyway, got the Bobby Brown story. Great conversation. Whitney was wonderful. They allowed me to go to Las Vegas and meet with them, and with Whitney when her and Bobby did a show in Las Vegas. Man, I have great relationships. I mean, so anyway. Fast forward, move to Macon.
So, but let me ask you this. So, do you realize that Macon has a deep strand in the DNA of Black music in America?
Come on, man. Otis Redding, and the family still lives here.
Wow.
And I'm very close to the family. They're great people, man. His wife and his daughter and son, Otis Redding Jr., man, great people, man, just amazing. Macon, and also Little Richard was born here in the city of Pleasant Hill. I'm connected to the family. Some of his family lives in Southern California still. Good friends of mine. They, so.
What's the horn section? What's the horns? Oh man, I can't remember. There's a horn section. They had some records out there. Oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of them. Out of Macon, Georgia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't remember them.
Well, yeah. Well, Macon has some rich music history, man. In fact, James Brown recorded "Please, Please, Please" at a radio station here at WIBB, and actually in the museum, we actually have the actual recording with James Brown signed it and everything. So one of his biggest hits. He really made it big here, and he's not from Macon, but he spent a lot of time here in Macon. He's from Augusta. Yeah, he's from Augusta.
Yeah, he's from Augusta. He mentions Macon in some of his records.
All the time. I mean, because this was Macon used to be the place, and
yeah. All right, so Harold, let me ask you this, man. Okay, two things I want to ask you. First of all, Dr. Loewen was talking about Macon still has a sign for the Sundown Towns over there. Have you seen that?
It's here at the museum. I didn't.
I'm holding it prisoner.
I'm studying things that now that I'm in. This is a new role for me now as executive director. My role was I was the marketing director for the sketch. I mean, for the museum. I was doing all the events. My title was special events manager. So I did from weddings here all the way up to the festival, and also our big black tie event that we have called All That Jazz, which is I brought in Patti LaBelle and Stephanie Mills, and that's our big event that I'm in charge of. Excuse me. And so, yeah.
All right, let me ask you the other question I have for you. So I was reading. So you're the executive director of the Tubman Museum, which is African American history, culture,
Mhm.
art, all of that. It's an arts institution. And so you're the third executive director, but the first black one.
That is correct. In 40 years. Yeah.
So
Okay. Listen. Okay. How does that work, right? I'm gonna tell you a really interesting story. Who's a white Catholic priest started the museum here.
oh,
Yeah. So his name is he's a previous he's not a priest anymore. His name is Richard Kyle. He put up his own money, and he was man. It was amazing. He marched in civil rights. He went to Alabama. He marched in all kind of great. He's still alive. He's probably 80 something. Man, great man. I mean, and so he said, when people think like, okay, why the Tubman Museum? Why has Harriet Tubman have any relationships with Macon? No, he loved what she stood for. And so it's called the Tubman African American Museum that he created. Actually, this year we celebrating our 40th year. And they've only had 3 directors, and when they decided to actually have an executive director, yes, they were white gentlemen, and I am the first. People say, Harold, how do you feel like being the first? Do you remember the second and third place people sometimes? I'm okay with being first.
right.
Yeah, it's okay. It was meant for me evidently, because I wasn't even thinking about a museum. My background is in music and entertainment and marketing. I thought I was going to be, a executive at an entertainment one of the record company, signing folk. That's what I always thought I was going to end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought I would be a CEO, executive director of a museum. That was not on my radar. But it's okay. It's okay. Maybe one day I probably will run an entertainment company.
Well, let me ask you in your position now, because as the nation, begins to recover from COVID and all this, there's a lot of conversation around the creative economy, right, and making sure that there's funds available for arts institutions. And before I go on, I'm just going to let you know I'm a board member of the Arts Council for Long Beach here in Long Beach, California, and yeah, I'm the treasurer there. So I'm up to my follicles in the whole. It's about the arts, right? And bringing you on today really is an extension of that, because we want to talk about the preservation of our history of our arts. Having Professor Loewen on and some of the recent shows that we've had, we really want to talk about the preservation of the arts. And let's just face it takes money to do that.
Right.
How financially does the Tubman Museum support itself? Do you find it difficult to gain funds and grants in order to operate?
There are some that are dedicated to like African American art. There are some there. I mean, they're very small. I mean, not an African, but yes, we are definitely. It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that that my goal is to do is also the preservation of our arts and our history and our culture is so important. If these young people don't understand who they are, where they come from,
Mm-hmm.
and what was it like, and understand the minds of African Americans, you will never get the pride that we deserve. We need to understand that our history is not beautiful. It's nothing that I mean, slavery to Jim Crow to civil rights to now we're telling people that we matter, Black Lives Matter. That is not a beautiful picture per se. But underneath that, man, we some strong people, man.
Yeah.
We are vibrant. It's something in our DNA allows us to strive and survive. So back to the arts of preserving that, and it's very important that we do that. So those young people know that, listen, this ain't, you know, you got it a little bit better, but this didn't come easy. So not thinking that, man, I could just walk anywhere I want to. No, let's go back to Sundown. You couldn't go in the neighborhood. You couldn't buy a property over there. The last house before I moved to Macon was in Torrance. I had no idea that city that I bought a house that I paid taxes for, they didn't want me there. I did not know that. I didn't know the history about that because that wasn't my focus. I wasn't into history. So anything about entertainment, music, that was my focus. Anything I was like, that was just me. That's just my DNA. But to understand that now, it's like, but I grew up in South Central LA. I was born on the east side of LA, which is 42nd and Hooper.
That's right. Yeah.
Can anything come out of South Central LA? Yes. Man, I'm telling you. So with my area, you know where that is over there, you know, by Metropolitan Baptist Church, right down the street. Right, that's where I grew up. And I went to Escott Avenue, then I went to Carver. My family, all my brothers and sisters went to Jefferson High School. I ended up getting bused to Van Nuys because I want to tell you this real quick. My mom said to me one day, she says, and it was really strange. She said, "How many white people do you know?" None. At that time, I didn't know any. I mean, I was like, there's one. And then that time, a lot of Hispanics would start moving into the community. I also know some Mexicans, but they were like, she said, "You don't know any?" I said, "No, I really didn't." And my only concept of white people were the ones that was on TV, on the daytime soaps, Dallas, Knox Landing. All white people were rich. All white people had it together. That was my concept of white people. And that was like, well, no, you don't get you out of here. You know, and this is talking about preserving stuff. This is what I want to get back. I went to Van Nuys High School, was bussed out there, and I realized that people are just people. They have the same issues, sometimes even worse. Then I was like, oh my God, you talk to your mama like that? Man, my lips would have been behind my head. Woo. Bruh.
Yeah, I was bused to school too, a little bit before you down in San Diego. But one of the things that you learn quick is they talk to their mama differently. Yikes.
I wish I could. I don't even think I knew my mother's first name until somebody else called. What? You don't call her first name? Are you serious? And you call an adult something other than Jim, and you call there's no Mr. or Sir. So and so all of this stuff that I'm saying, I tell my kids, you have no idea where you came from. This is stuff even culturally, you know, understanding that no, we didn't. You don't just now you got an iPhone. What? We had one phone with a long extension cord tied to that we all had to dial. I said, you have no idea. You know, I realized I was getting old. My daughter, I have a record player in here. I went and bought one of those old record players. And she said, "What is that?" I said,
Wow. You know, I used to do an exercise with my college interns at the radio station, and I would bring one of the little discs, the spindles for the 45.
Come on, man.
And I'll put it on the table in the conference room and say, "Okay, what is that?" And they would be like,
"Oh, no. I have a record player right in my office right now." So people walk in, "Does that work?" Right. "Oh, yeah. I got my, yes. I play my record." It's something about that. But see, those are things that preserving history and culture, that's why museums are important. That's why we have to make sure museums are, even with your art institute in Long Beach, understanding that these are so important because we will lose it. because they don't teach it in school. We talked about Martin Luther King, and we didn't call him Dr. Martin Luther, the Reverend Dr. Martin. We call him Martin Luther King.
Yep.
Forget that he was a reverend and a doctor. Forget all that.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks was just a tired lady just sitting on the bus who didn't understand. We talked about key people like that. But what about the inventors?
Mm-hmm.
What about people that we have no idea that a black person fixed the ironing board, a black person created the stop sign, a black person, which is my wife's cousin, Mark Dean, who actually invented the color monitor and the gigahertz. He worked for IBM. So African Americans don't understand. Well, but so I got to make sure that we stay. I work hard, man. I work 7 days a week. And my goal is trying to find funding. I'm reaching out to celebrities. I'm not trying to, and it's like celebrities get asked all the time. I'm not asking them to write me a check. I'm just asking them to help me raise some money. I'm like, because that's the first time you see it, you ask a celebrity contact, you see a letter, it's like, oh, they asking for some money. No, just help me raise some money. I don't need your, that's your money you work for. Just help me. Show me what I need to do. So I'm trying to so I have to find creative ways of raising money. We have missions, we have sponsorships, we have other events that we try to do constantly to keep revenue in it. Yeah, it's become very difficult to raise money, but it can be done.
Now you guys have, they're saying you're the largest African American cultural center. Is that it?
Well, they're art museums and they're history museums, but we're one of the largest African American that's dedicated to art, history, and culture here in the Southeast. So we're before we moved into this building, we were 8,000 square feet. We are now a 49,000 square foot building.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So what's the present? So how do you engage the audience now, in this COVID environment? Are you able to open, or what's happening?
Open. Georgia is open. So,
okay.
I
did see that.
There's a difference across the countries. I talked to other directors. I'm a part of the association of African American museums. Association of African American Museums, yes, and they've been closed since last year, and trying to do virtual. And one of the things that came out of all our meetings is kind of be careful of doing virtually so much, because we're an attraction. We're a brick and mortar. We have a building, and you want people to come inside, but then again, you don't want people to come inside because you're in a pandemic. But so how do you stay open? You try to do virtual. And people like, okay, I've seen the museum. Now I'm not going there. I don't need to go, and that's been some of the minds. So you try to do just enough to keep the interest going. We do a lot of events outside. We do drive-in movies. The people can stay in their cars and watch like the old school drive-in, listen in the car through the radio. We have events outside in our quad area with dance performances. We'll make sure everybody masked up and social distance. So we try to do as much as we can. What we can do, and we are open, and then people have to get temperature checked, mask, so we're doing what we can do to stay open. So that's been a difficult thing as well.
What's the top exhibit that you have right now?
Let me tell you, oh man, we just took it. We did an exhibit on Nelson Mandela on the apartheid. We had all of some of the original protest signs. We had some original articles. It was absolutely amazing. And if you go on our website, tubmanmuseum.com, we have a virtual tour. We actually have a mural. The mural doesn't show all the way, but it's a mural from Africa to America. The gentleman, his name is Wilfred Stroud. He created a museum that has hundreds and hundreds of different African Americans. So it's a timeline from slavery all the way to the first president of the United States. It's actually beautiful. We also have an exhibit, a music exhibit room where we talk about James Brown, Otis Redding, and Little Richard. We have an exhibit that we're changing, making history. So African American history, and then even our stairs, we have different pioneers of African Americans who's paved the way here. So we're celebrating here in Macon. We have our first African American female DA here. Anita Howard, she's an amazing lady. So, which is really historical for Macon. Man, African American female DA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And incredible. Let me ask you this now. Okay, so you're participating in, in the ecosystem of African American museums and everything like that. And we've had a couple of shows here where we had, high level executives in the arts community. The director of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture is a Black woman, right? We've had people from LA Cultural Affairs, from Long Beach, all of that. If I, my next couple, we're going to have a couple of shows coming up where we revisit the whole arts. I'd love for you to come back and be a part of that with us.
To.
Have you on there along with some folks from maybe Detroit and Washington, D.C. and all of those different
Love it. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That'd be absolutely amazing. Yes, I would love to.
All right. Now, how can we support the Tubman Museum?
Well,
is it on the website? Can we hit the button?
Hit the button. It's you go to tubmanmuseum.com.
Yeah.
And we have a membership. Our memberships are real reason. It's like $30 annually. That's for $30 a year. You go to McDonald's and you can't go to McDonald's for
$30.
$30 for a year, and then we have a family one for $6. And see, when you join the Tubman Museum, you can also get it's a part of an association of museums that you can visit other museums for free across the United States that we're associated with. So it's not just you may not ever come to Macon, but you'll be able to visit other museums. And one of the things that I want to say real quick when we talk about culture, and preserving our culture, a lot of people probably a lot of young people probably won't ever understand Harriet Tubman. Won't ever understand her, how powerful, I know is potentially going to be on the $20 bill and bringing her up and everything, which she freed the slave. The one thing that she did that I've been speaking on recently, been doing a lot of speeches lately, is when you get to a certain point of your life, you need to reach back and grab somebody with you. You may even achieve it in high school. Once you graduate high school, a young person should make sure the next person behind them graduates as well. Okay, I get my associate's degree. I get my bachelor's degree. Make sure somebody always go back and bring somebody with you. Harriet Tubman. So oh, wow. How do you relate that to today? Tyler Perry, same thing. When he got to a certain plateau of his life, he's reached back and grabbed people with him. So that's my compare. We're actually bringing Tyler Perry. I'm actually doing an exhibit with him within the next year, because I wanted to show people that Harriet Tubman is, oh my God, it's very important to preserve that history. But a young person may not relate so much to a Harriet Tubman because I don't quite get it. But I get Tyler Perry, So somebody I could actually see tangible. And that's sometimes we miss people that we need to. What my goal is to always have somebody parallel that's current and also of history, of historical person. So I can now a young person say, Now, the new. I told the group that I spoke to last week, the new Mark Zuckerbergs are not born yet. I said, back 10, 20 years ago, we never heard of a Facebook. You all create that. You have an opportunity to create the next phenomena. Amazon, what to sell? Online services? That was crazy. Look at it now. Somebody you have a void to fill everywhere. So reach back and grab somebody, bring somebody with you, bring somebody up with you. You may be in a situation, South Central, I don't care where you start up, is where you end up. I would never think that I would end up in Macon, Georgia, being an executive director. That was not on my radar. But and being the first African American, that's a hope that God had prepared for me when I was born. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my thing was, I mean, my sister was teasing me, and I'll say it, I don't care. They called me record head because I used to sit there and listen to records all day long, study, and that's why I started going to be in the music industry. I was like, I was study. I was like, oh my God, Quincy Jones, why did you change? Why did you make those changes like that? And then I put on something else. I'm like studying, like, oh my gosh. You know, I'm a C level drummer, but I don't play keyboards. I don't even sing. But the music, the behind the scenes is like, why did you, Barry Gordy, why did you just have one band?
Right.
Wow, you just had one band to play for everybody? That's ingenious.
Yes, brother.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm always thinking. So I'm thinking I'm going to be in the record industry. That was not what God had for me. He had me to be here, move to Macon, and now sit here now. So.
Well, you know, it does say, eyes have not seen or ears heard the things that the Lord has in store for those who love him.
I tell people also, be careful when you start praying, enlarge my territory. You know, yeah. I don't say that. I don't sing that song. I told when Donald Lawrence is singing, I don't care. I don't want to hear that no more. I don't want to hear the prayer of Jabez. No, I'm just kidding. Because you know, you never know what the Lord said. The Lord is your territory. To whom much is given, much is required. You're going to have to. You have to do a lot. You know. And I was like, okay, Harold, you've given this platform. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to be a blessing? What legacy are you going to leave? Who are you going to pull up with you? And I have young men that come visit my office weekly. That they just sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I want to, like I was like, you don't want to be like me. You want to be better than me because every generation should do better. I don't want you to just look at my life and say I want to do what you're doing. No, you can learn from me and do much better than me. Always try to do better. Don't try to just be mediocre.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's right. Excellence. You know, and that's really important, brother, for you to, you know, be an example to the young men in the community because, you know, we don't have that now in abundance. And you know, with our family situations these days, you know,
Wow.
for the young people to see a brother like you, I mean, that can save a life, man. You
Oh
know,
man, listen.
you never know.
Okay, no. That's interesting. You said that. I spoke at a college last week for the Black History program, which was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool. The majority of the audience was white for the Black History program.
Wow.
So I had one speech prepared, and I was like, that may not be the right speech right now, you know? So, but I was able. So at the end of it, and I'm always careful on. And I'm my worst critic. Was I effective? Did I say anything to impact somebody's life? Did I do anything? I got an email yesterday. I think two things happened yesterday. This young lady says, "Mr. Harold, you changed my life. I thought that, you know, because I gave the story about me living in South Central LA. You know, having a 2-parent household was very, very rare on my block. On an entire block, we've only had three 2-parent households in an entire block, you know, and people say, is that your real father? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's
I
him.
know that one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and I said, I'm not knocking your upbringing. It's what you do with it too, you know. I could have went astray. I told the story. I was in the gang for like 1 hour. I got jumped into the gang, and then by the time I got home, I told my father I was in the gang. He beat me up. I mean, not verbally, and I was out of the gang just that quick. Yeah. So that's my gang banging days. Didn't last long at all. No. Right. So, but that was my story. But she says, I thought where I grew up and how I grew up, I could not do anything, you know. And she said, now I look at you being an executive director, you know, taking risk and being, you know, working at Motown Records and begging for a job at Motown just to work in the work in the mailroom, getting out of the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
begging. That's my first job out of the Marine Corps.
Oh, I didn't know you was Marine Corps Semper Fi, my brother.
Hoorah, hoorah.
Hoorah!
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
didn't know.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Out of the Marine Corps, I think they'll find a job. I had a son, and I was like, I gotta find a job. Went to Motown Records in Hollywood and picked up the phone, the receiver, and says, I need a job. She said, we only got one job. She says, the mailroom. I said, I'll take it. She said, you can't just take it. I said, I want that job. Please give me that job. I was on a Friday. I was working that Monday at Motown Records. And that was the first time I met your previous boss, Stevie Wonder.
Yes.
He's in the office up there, and I ran into him with a cart. Never forget that story because he
See?
came around the corner. I hit him with the cart. My first day of the job. Thought I was fired. Like, I just hit Stevie Wonder with a cart. Yeah.
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. So that
It's interesting. Your words do mean something. I mean, I have a few stories like what you're speaking of, and one that always sticks out in my mind because I've watched her now become a high level executive at different radio stations. But a young lady came to KJLH and wanted to be an intern. And the question I always ask is, okay, why do you want to be in the radio business? And she said, because you came to my school. And I was like, what? And I was like, what did I say? She said, oh, you inspired me. And ever since then, I just said, I want to be in the radio business. And I was really blown away. Another story I tell you, is my mom came to visit me. Is actually the last time I even saw her alive when she came to visit me. And we went to the African marketplace. And this gangbanger came up and he had heard me on the radio and was like, yo, you Greg J, and he just really thanked me for whatever I was talking about on the radio. And then when he met my mom, I said, well, this is my mom, and now I understand he was in his blue. He was no question about it. He was he was banging. So he just said, "Oh, do you know what your son means to this community?" I mean, it really just blew us away. How he just really recognized the things that I had been saying and how I had touched his heart. And so you never know what you say and how it affects our community, and that's why you just got to continue to shine the light, man. Shine the light to the community.
man, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it sounds strange, but I do want to leave a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Not for my own big ego. It's like we're not gonna be here forever, and what impact have I made to anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to ask yourself, what's your purpose of being here?
Mm-hmm.
What's your real purpose? Do you have a purpose? Have you fulfilled that purpose? Are you walking in your purpose? Are you doing what God has called you to do? Are you, even that, raising your children right, trying to making sure that, you don't make all the great decisions because they can have every book in the world. You go to about how to raise a child until you raise one. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They no books telling me about this one.
It's like more than an ocean, right?
What chapter is that one on? Oh God! And I have daughters.
Oh yeah.
Oh God! Where's this one? First breakup. Oh my God! How do you deal with that? When oh my God, so
Yeah.
all stuff like that. So just even dealing with that, so um I mean I'm really careful. So even with the museum, want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. Uh not I'm going to make mistakes. I've never been an executive director of a museum. I've had leadership positions that as far as directors and management and stuff like this, but to be the helm, it's like, okay, you've been sitting in the passenger seat, now you're driving. It's like, okay, can you really drive?
Mm-hmm.
And see the pressure too, being the first African American, you know, um, director it's even more so of a challenge because um, you've had other directors who've allowed the museum to exist for 40 years. Now it's like because people say all the time, you guys had a white guy running it, a white man running it. Now, okay, now we got a black man. Now let's see.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
much money can you raise? And it's all about raising money, keeping the museum open, keeping the exhibits fresh, keeping people coming in and want to find out um, what's going on with the museum. Uh, we like our big fundraiser, our major fundraiser, we couldn't do in the pandemic. It was in January. It's called All That Jazz. That's when I tell you we brought Pay LaBelle, and
Mhm.
I was working on bringing Babyface this year. Of course, couldn't do it. Um, that was a major fundraiser. So I got to find funding for that.
Mhm.
I got to find the right, so not going to do it this year. I decided just go ahead and move it to next year to January again because it is the big black tie affair for all African Americans. I mean, I never seen so many fur coats and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, they wear furs here. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, because it's the event of the year, and I'm
Mhm.
not going to just water it down. People say, "Oh, just have it outside, just do it." No, it gives people a chance. And then we're planning our Pan African Festival. I am doing it this year. We didn't get it last year. It's going to take place May 1st and 2nd. Um, so the Pan African Festival Saturday, like I said, deal with a lot of culture. We have African dance, we have people from Caribbean, and so we did a lot. It's not just the Pan African movement.
Mhm.
It's the lady who created using a Pan African just so the whole as a community. Um, so we're working on that. It's going to take place this year, and on Sunday is our praise day. So we have a lot of choirs and artists that come in. I'm working on two artists that may be coming and performing for that event. So that's going to take place. But
Mhm.
then I got to still find other smaller things just to keep the museum open. Just like the 49,000 square foot building. Um, in '07, I found out that Oprah came in before the building was open. She came
Mhm.
here and she wanted to wait till the museum was open. And, we didn't get into this building until 2015 because of the pandemic. I mean, not pandemic, the economy was so bad, just shut down. So we finally got everything open in 2015.
Mhm.
And I haven't had a chance to reach out to her. I'm like, look, we open now.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't like, just I got to do it. I
Got
got
to
to
do it. Got to get in, man. See what happens. That's what's up. Yeah.
find. You know,
Well, Harold, man, thank you so much for coming on Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Got an open door here. I'll be calling you soon because we got some other conversations to take place
man, we get
out
listen.
here.
People like you see. That's why I got coffee conversation. I can talk to you for hours, and I know I got to get to work. My phone been ringing
I
off
got
the hook.
things
And
to
I'm like,
do.
this can get pretty comfortable because it's just so much history that
Yes.
and African American, we're so diverse that we could go different. We can start talking about anything, and we could just go. We start talking about nature, and let's talk about that. And just so many different things that we could talk about as African American. And I thank you for giving this opportunity, man. I don't take it lightly because you could have called anybody, and to be on your show. This is your name on it, and thank you for this opportunity.
I appreciate you so much, man. Look, we're going to do I want to encourage people to hit up tubmanmuseum.com, make some donations. Let's support the culture for hashtag for the culture. You know how we do it.
Come on
So if
now.
y'all can get that one. Harold, how can we get a hold of you directly?
Listen, I'm on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I just my daughter's like, Daddy, don't they get embarrassed like, Daddy, don't do Instagram. You too old for Instagram. I was like, what?
Come on
I said,
now.
I mean, Oprah's older than me. She got an Instagram account, so like,
Yes. Yes.
no. But I am open. But Facebook's probably the best way to contact me
All
now.
right. Okay.
And also the Tubman Museum.
Mhm.
Listen, if you want to send me an email, hyoung@tubmanmuseum.com. I'll
Okay.
be more than happy. I mean, listen, and also go to our website, which is tubmanmuseum.com. We're right here in Macon, Georgia. If you come if you're driving from Atlanta going to Florida, you can't miss Macon. If you're coming from Savannah going to Atlanta, you can't miss Macon because we're dead center. You got to go right past us. Stop here and see us.
All right. That's what's up. That's what's up. All right, everybody. There you have it. Woo, we've had an education today. My
Woo!
goodness. It's a lot, but we're glad that you all stopped by, sip some coffee with us. Just know that this is available on demand on Facebook, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. on Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com, and also now the audio podcast. Wherever you get your audio podcast from, you can find us. Just type in the search Coffee Conversations with Greg J. We're there. Our other podcast is there too, the Afro Pop Radio. It's all there. It's all there. It's all there. Whew. All right, y'all. I got to get some other stuff done. I will see you on Thursday. We're going to begin our Phenomenal Woman series for Women's History Month. And, let's take a moment, too, to acknowledge the passing of Vernon Jordan. Man, what an incredible man, incredible icon in our community. And passed away last night at the age of 85. And we just say, rest in power, sir. Thank you for what you've done for us as people.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody. Remember, love one another. Love one another. Love one another.